Welcome to the laser calibration video. This video shows you the details of the laser calibration and helps you if you have problems with the laser detection. So, in situations like when you pull the trigger, but the shots are not detected, or when the opposite happens, you don't shoot, still some random shots appear on the screen, especially at bright spots, or when it works fine, but occasionally some shots are not detected. Then this video is for you. We assume that you already know how to start a stage with laser training, how to connect the camera app to the range with the connection ID, how to calibrate the screen and detect its borders, and you have a visible red or green laser. If you are not familiar with any of these, please watch our other videos first. You can find these in the manual. Next, I'm going to show you how the detection works, the difference between automatic and manual calibration. And finally, I'm going to give you some troubleshooting tips. First, let's talk about how the app detects the laser. The idea is very simple. During the training, the camera watches the range screen. Whenever it detects the bright dot of the laser that is brighter than the detection threshold, it registers a shot. Technically speaking, the camera continuously scans every single frame pixel by pixel of the range screen. It can see the color and can measure the brightness of each point. You can think about it as a three-dimensional bar chart where the height of the columns represents the brightness. The brightness values are measured between 0 and 255. 0 means black, and 255 means white. The laser detection threshold is also a specific brightness value. Here, the threshold is represented by this yellow plane. If a pixel is brighter than this value, it will be detected as a shot. So, the camera sees a bright point. And if it's brighter than the threshold, it will be detected as a shot. It also means that during training, the laser can be the only thing that's brighter than the detection threshold. The exposure settings of the camera shall be well balanced. The brightest point on the range screen shall be close, but still below the threshold. If the image is too bright, and there are multiple points above the detection threshold, then the camera is not going to know which one is the laser, and not going to detect any shots. Later, in the camera app, you will see that such areas are highlighted in magenta, or pink, or purple, or whatever that color is. So, if the image is too bright, you have to make the image darker or increase the detection threshold. On the other hand, if the image is too dark and the exposure is too low, then it might be too dark for the camera to see the laser, and again, your shots won't be detected. In this case, you have to make the image brighter, or decrease the detection threshold, bringing it to the level of the laser. And that's how it looks like in the app. I'm going to show more details about that a bit later. Now that you know how the detection works, let's talk about the automatic laser calibration. As its name suggests, the automatic calibration tries to find the ideal brightness level where the brightness is close, but still below the detection threshold. If the automatic calibration is active, then every time you start a new stage, the range screen displays the calibration bars, and the phone begins testing multiple exposure settings to find the optimal brightness level. The most important rule is, do not fire the laser during the calibration. That would confuse the camera and the brightness measurements. When the laser calibration is completed, a success message appears on the phone, and the laser calibration button turns green. Beyond that, the phone automatically switches to train mode. The range screen displays the first targets, and you can start training. When the app detects a shot, a yellow crosshair appears on the viewfinder to show the location where it detected the laser. The app also has a so-called overflow protection. That means if you point a laser bore sighter or a laser pointer at the screen, the app is going to register just one single shot when the laser appears. This way, it's not going to flood the screen with hundreds of shots. The automatic calibration works for most people, but it's not perfect. It might not work with your personal setup, with your screen, projector, laser or phone, and so on. In case you would experience issues with the laser detection, there are two things you can do. First, you can repeat the automatic calibration anytime during training. Just tap on laser calibration on the left, then tap on auto calibration on the right to restart the automatic calibration. Note that in this case, the calibration bars are not going to appear on the screen. Rather, the calibration will be performed with the actual targets on the screen. Sometimes it provides even better results. However, if the automatic calibration repeatedly fails, the other thing you can do is to switch the camera to manual laser calibration. In manual mode, you can manually adjust both the brightness and the detection threshold. To switch to manual mode, tap on laser calibration on the left, then tap on manual calibration on the right. There are two sliders at the bottom of the screen. The first one can adjust the laser detection threshold. The number next to it shows the current brightness level of the threshold. Points brighter than this value will be detected as a shot. Remember, the brightness is measured between 0 and 255. In this case, the threshold is set to 250. So later, the laser has to be brighter than this value. If the laser is weak, or the screen does not reflect it back to the camera, and its brightness does not reach the threshold, the shot will not be registered. The slider at the bottom adjusts the brightness of the image that the camera sees. The number next to it shows the current brightness of the brightest point on the screen. This value fluctuates a little. In this case, it's fluctuating around 210. The reason behind this fluctuation is the image noise, which is a kind of electronic noise coming from the camera sensor. So what the camera sees is not a solid image, but something like this. As mentioned before, the goal is that the brightness is close but below the detection threshold. If the image is too bright and its brightness is too close to the threshold, then due to the fluctuation, some points might sometimes jump above the threshold. The status message at the top keeps changing and the yellow crosshair is also blinking. That marks the place where the app would detect a shot. In this case, a false shot. When that happens, the app might register false shots even when you don't shoot, and random shots might appear on the screen. The yellow crosshair shows the first point that the app would detect as a shot, but if there are too many pixels above the threshold, those will be highlighted in magenta. That helps finding problematic areas on the range screen that are too bright. If there are some points on the image that reach the maximum brightness level of 255, then the image is burned. In this case, the app has no chance of finding the laser. The goal is to keep the brightness always below the threshold. When the status message at the top is stable and green, then you can test the laser. Fire a shot and see what happens in the camera app. If the message at the top remains green when the laser is on the target, then the laser is not bright enough to reach the detection threshold, and your shots will not be registered. I'm going to give you some tips later on how to solve this problem. If you notice the yellow crosshair flickering when you shoot, and that the status message at the top turns briefly yellow or red, then the detection works great. It means that when the laser appears on the target, then it's bright enough to reach the detection threshold and would be detected as a shot. In this case, you have completed the manual laser calibration. You can now switch back to train mode and enjoy the training. Remember, if the laser calibration is set to manual, then the camera remains locked in manual mode. So the next time you start a new stage, the color calibration bars and the automatic laser calibration will be skipped, since the camera is already in manual mode. It also means that you might have to readjust the manual calibration when you start a new stage, especially when the new stage is significantly brighter or darker than the previous stage. One last advice. When you touch the screen to switch between modes or to move the sliders, be gentle. If you move the camera too much, the purple borders might no longer overlap with the screen borders, and you might have to repeat the screen calibration to detect the borders again. Now that you understand how the automatic and the manual laser calibration works, I can give you some troubleshooting tips. First, let's double-check the following points. Make sure you did not fire the laser during the automatic laser calibration. That can confuse the camera when it tries to find the optimal exposure settings. If you did shoot at the screen, you have to repeat the laser calibration. If you have a green laser, it's recommended to change the detection color to green. Check if you have completed all the calibration steps and all the buttons on the left are green, and make sure that the camera is in train mode. The app picks up the laser and registers the shots only in train mode. Make sure that the batteries of the laser are fully charged. When the battery gets too low, the brightness of the laser might gradually reduce. You can still see a red dot on the screen, but it might be too dim for the camera. Especially when you shoot fast, it can happen that the laser is still bright at the first few shots, but as the laser gradually gets dimmer, the camera might not see the later shots. If the laser dot is too small and dim, or when the camera is too far from the screen, you can reduce the brightness on the screen or on the projector. If you cannot change the brightness on the hardware, there is a brightness button on the range screen. It applies a darkening filter on the screen. That can be helpful, but only as a backup solution. Reducing the hardware brightness is always better. The point is that a darker screen makes even a weak laser relatively brighter and more detectable. Watch this. Now let's make it darker. The more the laser stands out, the easier the camera can pick up the shots. On the other hand, the reduced brightness makes the screen calibration more difficult. To make the screen detection work, the brightness can be temporarily increased for the screen calibration, and the reduced again for the laser calibration and for the rest of the training. If you have a flat screen display, remember that you might have to add a plastic film to reflect the laser. Dry fire online is for indoor training only. The ambient brightness must remain stable during the training. Changes of the ambient light level, even if slow, gradual, and unnoticeable, can cause laser detection problems. Training in a darker room can help as well, since it makes the laser seem brighter. After double-checking these points, here are a few tips to narrow down the root cause of laser detection problems. That's where we can use again the yellow crosshair that flickers on the viewfinder when the app detects a shot. When your shots are not detected, take a look at the viewfinder of the app. If the yellow crosshair doesn't appear when you shoot, then the app cannot pick up the laser because the brightness of the laser does not reach the detection threshold. So the goal is to make it somehow brighter than the threshold. In this case, you can reduce the detection threshold, or make the laser brighter and more noticeable by replacing the batteries, or by reducing the screen brightness, or by adding a film to the screen to help with the reflection. Another possible problem when the shots are not detected is that the yellow crosshair is always on the screen. It does not flicker when you shoot, but it's constantly there somewhere on the screen, and it doesn't disappear. It shows that the app continuously detects something that is too bright, and it believes that that's the laser. As discussed at the overflow protection, when the app continuously detects something above the threshold, it's not going to flood the screen with hundreds of shots, but it will stop picking up the laser, so the shots will not be detected. That's what happens here as well. In train mode, the crosshair just shows the first point that is brighter than the threshold, but it signals that some parts of the range screen are too bright, and there can be multiple points above the detection threshold. In this case, you can make the screen darker, or increase the detection threshold. When you don't shoot, still the camera registers some random shots. You might see the crosshair randomly appear in the app. It happens when the brightness of the range screen is so close to the detection threshold that due to the camera noise and the fluctuating brightness, some points sometimes go above the threshold, causing the app to register a false shot. Or when the ambient brightness changes after the calibration. In this case, you can restart the automatic laser calibration, or increase the detection threshold. And finally, when sometimes some shots are not detected. That's usually a sign of a low battery, or some reflection problems when the laser is not reflected back to the camera. so it cannot pick up the shots. With this final tip, we have reached the end of this video. Thanks for watching, and get in touch with us in case you're still facing problems with the laser detection. We are always happy to help.